I'm having some coffee on the back porch. And you can hear all the air conditioner vents. This is why, like, it's always like really tricky to like be like, hey, I'm gonna come outside. I'm gonna do something outside my apartment. You know, it's like you're outside your house. It's just like you just hear the constant hum of air conditioner vents and air conditioner like units and whatnot. And I don't know, there's always a constant hum around. And I don't know, I guess that's the only hum. The only hum is like the air conditioner unit. Make sure things are comfortable inside your house, because if they're not comfortable inside your house, like, what's that gonna be like? What's that gonna be like? You know, it's like, as long as I got my internet and I got my electricity and I got my air conditioner. But you know, this morning is like really nice. I'm just like wearing a hoodie and some shorts and drinking a coffee on the back porch type of thing. I don't know. There was a thought that I had last night. It was something to the effect of, it was like, you know, that saying goes, you know, like 2019 is my year. You know, it's like the New Year's thing. It's like you sit there and you kind of think as you're having a drink or whatever, or you're with family, loved ones, partying, whatever, and you're kind of just like, you know what, it's my year. You know, you have this like pause moment of reflection, you know, and I think that that's sort of like what the holidays are kind of about. It's like a way to kind of press pause on your life, so to speak, you know, before you end up having to go into the reality of like another year of things not working out perfectly the way that you want them to, or they are catastrophically not working out the way that you want them to, or whatever else. I always thought that was kind of woke up this morning with that thinking that was a stupid way to think about life. You know, like 2019 is my year versus what, not your year, and how they're all your years. Like, I don't know, kind of the like 2020 is like, well, what's happened so far? I'm inside my house. I can't go anywhere. And it's like, I can't live my life. No, you're living your life. This is part of your life, you know? They're all your years. They're all your years until they're not your years. You know? And I don't know, they kind of made me, I thought this morning made me kind of happy that they're all your years. Like you get a chunk of them. You could get like 20 of them. You could get like 40 of them. You could get 70 of them. You get 90 of them. You may get 100 of them. Maybe you get 120 of them. Like there's people that like live to 120. I'd love to meet somebody who lived to be 120. That'd be the coolest thing ever. Like how the hell did they live to be 120? And two, what were they around? Like what flies on what walls was that like 120-year-old on and was able to see or hear, like in the radio in passing type of thing? It's like 120. Like if there was a 120-year-old person, they would have been born in 1900. Yeah, 1900, right? 2020 minus 120 is 1900, so 1900. And they would have been 18 years old at around the end of World War One, and they would have been around the flu pandemic that was happening in 1918. They would have heard all about that stuff. They would have been around it. My grandfather and my grandmother were born, they were maybe 8 in 1918. And my grandmother passed away. Grandmother passed away, I think, in 1999. I think it was 1999. It was either 1999 or like 2000. And that was the last time I saw my cousin Matthew, other than a trip that we happened to go for Tempor, that we're like still trying to kind of figure out. And which I guess we're going to we're going to be releasing it as like a pure EPUB first, because, you know, of all this. And we were going to release it as like a printed, like we were going to just about to go on a print run, because we had a exhibition in and around Miami, of photographic work that we were going to release it there. But we're going to end up kind of going the EPUB route first, and as that postpones, and then release it as we release the print version as we kind of can do so, type of thing. And that took about like a good solid a little bit more than a year to put together. You know, I mean, that was a hard endeavor. But I was talking about my grandmother, and I guess the point I was trying to make was my cousin Matthew and I were like pallbearers at her funeral, and that was the last time that we spoke to each other than, you know, that trip that we were driving through South Dakota, Wyoming, and kind of bumped back through, and he happened to live in Denver, and we got a hold of him, and we ended up like staying there for a couple of days and having a good family conversation about our respective families and how they were alike and the same. You know, he has like a heavy kind of, I don't know, evangelist background, kind of away from, you know, with his family and coming to terms with it. And I think I have a heavy small business capitalist background, that I am coming to grips with my dad and my family. You know, where it's like their family's life is the church and my family's life was a small business, you know, and it's like a very similar dynamic, you know. It's like, you know, it's like kind of the plot line of There Will Be Blood, you know, Eli versus Daniel. Like Daniel's like the hyper capitalist that wants more and more and more. And we didn't get more and more and more. We were just surviving. But then Eli wanted the social more and more and more, and, you know, type of thing. And so I kind of, to me, a little bit, I can draw a parallel between those two worlds in a very clear way, with a nice, clear, kind of set of examples with it that, you know, you kind of come to grips with. And I don't know, it's like going back to the your time thing. It's not somebody else's time, it's your time, you know, and how a family will want you to do something that you don't want to do. And then you go and do it anyway. And you learn like, okay, well, what'd you learn from that lesson? The lesson is I need to do more stuff for me and less things for other people, you know, like I want to do the things for other people that I want to do, you know, but I want to do the things that I want to do for me too. So it's like this balancing act thing. It's like my family, like I got to take care of my family here. I can't take care of any other family in the way that I can take care of the two people that are in my immediate life, type of thing. And those are the people that give me the most value in my life, type of thing. We have been going back and forth a couple times, and I think we probably value our days and the days that we can hop in the car and just drive. I don't ever leave the car. It's mainly family runs for Jenny Lynn's family. And, you know, it's like, hold on, coffee. So we measure the days on how we can get out in the car. And it's not like anything is happening out in the real world. You know, you kind of think that you're here and you're kind of walled off and looking at your quiet facades outside your apartment building. You know, I see deck chairs, and the main reason why I'm doing this right now in the morning, I was thinking about doing it in the evening and like having a drink and talking about it, and having the 11 p.m. Into the night, enough whiskeys could go to sleep type of talk about this. But there's a lot of like kids of certain ages here, not kids, but you know what I mean, like, you know, 20-year-olds that are up at all hours. So you hear parties going on, and they're all fast asleep right now. So I kind of got my early morning sunrise cup of coffee in me, getting the day started, which feels kind of similar to the in the evening drink, about to go to sleep, somberness. Like I'm got the early morning somberness as I'm rising up. What am I going to do? Probably edit this. So we're measuring our days in the momentous occasion of being able to go out in the car and go drive. And the car has like a range on it that, like where you basically turn it on and it tells you how much gas mileage you have left and how many miles. We've been in for more than a solid month now. And every time I go out, I'm like, oh, wow, I got 270 miles of range. And then the next time I'll be like, oh, okay, I still got 270. And I'll go from 270 to 250. And I still got like 225 miles of range. And I haven't filled up the car in over a month. So at that rate, I probably, for as long as this lasts, I probably don't need to go to a gas station to fill it up for the duration of this, unless something happens that's serious, like I have to go drive somewhere or whatever. But so the point is, we're not driving. And so I am we're having to drive. We drove back and forth the last couple times because we've been making masks. And I was thinking about thinking about to get the 3D printer working this weekend, so I could 3D print masks. But I only have PLA. PLA is like the corn-based plastic, and it's very like rigid. It's not very flexible. And I was kind of thinking about in between the styrations, I could make like heavy infill on the part, but it would be, the more infill you have, the more rigid it would be. And I ultimately don't trust that use for it. That like you could go the route, and I have a couple of HEPA filter air conditioner inserts around here that I could cut apart and turn it into an N95 mask or whatever. But I just kind of like look at it, I'm like, it's not gonna work. I'm gonna sit there like all day and like 3D print and go and deal with a 3D print mask, and I know immediately that the masks that we designed are totally fine for whatever we need them for. So they're just mainly for the grocery store runs that we got to make maybe once a week or once every week and a half or so. So I'm not doing it. But we ended up sewing up a bunch of masks and give them to family members. So our drives have been just going and dropping them off to her parents, and then her aunt and uncle and things. And yesterday we went and we'd done that. And and this has been maybe about a year to the day, where when we first moved here, we were living with them to get our feet about us, get up on our feet. That's what I'm trying to say. It took a little bit of time. I mean, what ended up happening was, what was really cool was I was able to write for Tempor issue 3. And it was trying. I mean, we ended up doing a lot to get right financially because we moved, and a whole lot of things were moving. A new job was happening for Jenny Lynn. And so it was like trying to find work, like trying to find a footing here took a tremendous amount of work. I mean, it took me probably until we moved here September. I had to get Marco like ready for Florida school for like health care and find a school. So October, then like the holidays hit, so nobody was looking for work. And then the first of the year I was applying for jobs and had a couple like leads, but then didn't make the final cut type of thing. And then as it like went, I ended up finally kind of, instead of doing the send your resume to everybody route. I ended up just like going and outwardly networking with people. And that was a challenge because, you basically have your child and stuff, and people meet in the evening, and then you're picking up everybody in the evening and handling everything in the evening. And it's just kind of a tricky situation to get into the right swing with it. So I guess long story short, it took a while for me to get my bearings, but I would end up finding myself with tremendous chunks of time in between to be able to write Tempor. And that ended up really being helpful. It ended up being able to kind of yield a very large body of writing. That was really helpful. That pause ended up hitting, and I was able to kind of make something that I wanted to make with it. And during that time, like there was things that I was finding myself being, kind of asked to do. I was running an ESL group for a little bit. And then I was, there was a period of time where, Jenny Lynn's relatives were here from getting away from Venezuela for a little bit. And it was the type of thing, I don't know, that makes me think of this experience now, and back to the thought of, they're all your years, like all of these years are your years, like my year is the year where I'm the big man. No, they're all your years. The year where you're like little and hadn't figured out like what your life is yet, and the years where you're successful, because that's short-lived too, like they're all your years. You get a chunk of them. For a little bit in the spring, right about a year ago, just before I got the job that I have now, I was her relatives had come over for Christmas. It was her great uncle and her grandmother came over, and they were kind of in, she was, I believe, in her late 80s and he was in his 70s, early 70s. He had a timeshare property here, so he was able to kind of come around here and have a place to stay, and had a couple of apartments and things, and had passive income type of stuff here. And and it was the type of thing they always come for Christmas, and they always come and stay for like a month or month and a half, or however long they stay for, and then they go back. But this time they didn't go back, and it was almost like they were quarantined out of their country, if that makes sense. So like you're in your apartment, and your apartment is the spot that you can stay in, or your house, or a big house, a small house, a little apartment. You might be able to go to the grocery store and back or whatever, but that feeling is probably how they felt, but they didn't have knowledge of the language that you spoke here. Central Florida, there's plenty of Spanish speakers, and you can kind of bump around, but it's not, it's not the same. It's not the same culture. It's not the same life. It's not the same anything. It's like pure, it's diaspora, right? It's like you're locked off. You've gone somewhere else, and you have to make sense of that new culture and space outside of your own. And that's what happened. I mean, they had their family connections and stuff, and but other than that, they were just kind of, after a while, it was like, this is not fun anymore. I want to go home. That feeling to go home they had, So after a while, it was like they were worried about her grandmother that was in her 80s, and they always kind of was like, okay, is she sharp? Is she having cognitive decline? No, she seems good. All that stuff. And I was asked for a couple of days to hang around her for whatever reason. The great uncle and her like kind of hung out, but he had stuff he had to do, and he was going around. And he had like a car here and things, and was able to go bump around and run errands and whatnot. And it was like everybody was watching the grandmother, and I was asked a couple days, can you do that? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I can do that. I'll bring my laptop and sit down and hang out in the house, and and there was something that struck me during that period of time, and this was like where it was like the first instances of Juan Guaido, like he was going to come in and like they were pushing for, or the United States, and then the Venezuelan right wing community was pushing to have him come in, and like basically, for lack of a better word, use legal and government, law to basically overthrow Maduro. So basically he was on the news during that time, and my Spanish is not good, practically non-existent. But I can visually see things. And what I was noticing during that period of time was that the speeches that were coming on were heavily like gaslit. They were calm. And, it was almost like there's a Barack Obama's photographer, Pete Souza. He was, there was a degree of like, Kennedy-esque kind of photographic propaganda that he was good at, of like the humanizing Barack Obama and making him like look like JFK, ever more intense with the level of color, with the level of like the, kind of the aspect of digital photo, like rendering color in these spectacular ways. And like in a previous one of these, I was talking about the greens and blues in Florida, and how the analogous color scheme makes you feel like everything's going to be all right. It's almost like it's like the perfect retirement area of the world to live in because of the color. That you're wondering what the great unknown is going to be, but you're kind of in the present, just like seeing the shifts in that color scheme. They kind of just move in that analogous color scheme throughout the day, as the sun rises through midday to the end of the day. The winter time is even more intense than the summertime in terms of those colors and the way that the winter sun hits here and all that stuff. And I sense that, and I sense that with Sousa's work with Obama, like the analogous, like the everything's going to be all right, color scheme, of using that color scheme with him. There was one in particular that I can't find a photo of now, and I don't even know, maybe I dreamed it or something, that maybe it doesn't exist, but it existed in like a hallucination in my dreams. That, it was like a very like distorted depth of field. So meaning it was like, to people that don't know photography, it was like a compressed depth of field. Like they either used a, kind of f 1.4, 1.8 ish aperture. So you had a very shallow depth of field. Either that or it was like, kind of a Photoshop trick. I don't think it was a Photoshop trick, mainly because I just don't think it was like a Photoshop, like playing with depth of field, like with blur, type of effect. I think it was done in camera. That doesn't matter. But, where it was like Obama's face close up, but then in the background, you ended up having kind of the garden in the background, like the rose garden, and the greens that were punching through were like kind of blurry, but then like able to kind of blend color in its blurred state with the quality of the lens or whatever, that gave you these like painterly brush strokes around. And it was like the most beautiful kind of effect that I don't know. It was with me in a while for how I handle portraiture, mainly because I want the face, I want the structure of the face, but I want the effect of the background to kind of come in, and then you end up having whatever the background is in pure color, where you end up finding that effect, however you're going to kind of bring in maybe a light to illuminate the face with the ambient light in the background to be able to kind of blend that color. And I love that, look, in terms of like a portrait, like you're filling the composition and filling that with the structural facial components with the you know, with the pure color and ambience from the background. And that was something that I was like thinking about when I was watching Jenny Lynn's grandmother, because Guaido was on TV, and I was noticing the same color scheme. I was noticing whenever he was talking, I wasn't like really paying attention to what he was saying, as my Spanish is crappy. But I was like very focused on like the visuals of the press conference. I could hear the tone of the voice, and it was very calming, and, you know, like, we're going to get through this together type of calm, with the colors, you know, in the background. It was like almost like he was basically trying to soothe a Rottweiler or a tiger or something, you know, with the visuals and the tone. And she was intently watching the TV. And it kind of struck me as I was just sitting there kind of watching that, and, you know, and that feeling resonated with me in a way that was like uncannily off-putting. Like, I didn't understand what was being said, or really ultimately what she was going through in that circumstance at that time. She put on a strong face and was with her family and whatever, you know, and he did also. But, you know, it's sort of like you aren't in your country watching, you know, this quite potent piece of propaganda being put to you when you just want to go back to your house, you know, in another country. So fast forward to it like a couple days later, you know, we've had kind of a schedule that requires like driving and stuff. I was picking up Marco, and it was a really like sunny day. Like at that time, Marco was at childcare that was next to Jenny Lynn's work, so that I could drop them all off at the same thing and pick them all up at the same thing. It wasn't the best place. You know, he's at a far better, more awesome place now. Like, that was sort of like a kind of a rocky time for him, you know, just moving from Texas to Florida, moving schools, like all that stuff. And so we picked them all up, and it was like one of those days that was, you know, where the seasons change pretty fast here, to where all of a sudden it turns into like summertime vibe and summertime air and feel and air and whatever. And I picked them up, and it was like a very nice drive home. Usually it'd been like, he's upset talking about school, but today he was like very, very happy and chill, and we were playing music and having a good time. Traffic wasn't that horrible. Usually it was like, we'd have to drive all the way out of the way to get home. You know, that type of thing. We're like much closer now in terms of the driving that we had to do, you know, when we were driving for work and stuff. So we were driving, and it was nice, music playing, sun, warm, you know, beautiful. Like, it was like the most beautiful air and sky driving home. And, you know, I think during that time, I was like, kind of like, you know, I just got a word back for a job that might happen. And it was like feeling like a really good vibe, good time. And it was like, you know, just driving, finally got back to Jenny Lynn's parents' house. And, you know, it was like, we were driving up, and like the sun was setting really orange and beautiful. And we would drive down the street to get to her parents' house, where we parked that on the street. And like, her dad was like getting the mail with the music playing. He was waving at us. We were waving back, and, you know, good vibes, good vibes, good vibes. Parked the car, you know, got our stuff, went inside. We're kind of getting situated for like, we were getting situated to figuring out like what we were going to do for dinner and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, Jenny Lynn's dad runs back in, and he was like, you know, oh, something happened. I was like, what happened? And it's like, something happened to Jenny Lynn's great uncle. And I was like, I'll go with you. And we basically, the house that her aunt and uncle live at are like right down the street. So like, her family's close on the block. So it'd be like basically, I don't know, like 200 feet, 300 feet, something like that. Like 75 yards, There you go, 75 yards. And we walk over there, or run over there rather, and go through the front door, and her great uncle is dead on the floor. And it was the craziest thing. It was like going from that sunny light, you know, that sunny, beautiful, everything is all right light, to interior. And it was like, right into a new scene, a new time. And it was the most jarring thing ever. It was like you were in another world, you were in another dimension, and it sucked you into a hard reality. This man was like playing with Marco like 2 days before. Like they all came over, and Marco was running around, and he was giving him faces. And, you know, it's sort of like, I pick up on things with all of Jenny Lynn's family members, because like my Spanish isn't good, that it's more like facial, visual, you know, kind of expressions and stuff. And the animation on this man's face was beautiful. And how he was kind of giving Marco these beautifully animated faces, where Marco knows Spanish, I don't know Spanish. And like they were communicating, and it was like the most amazing thing ever, you know. And one of the first times I came back, I think it was the time that I came back to propose to Jenny Lynn, that period of time that we were living in Boston at the time, going to school. And I came back, and we went to St. Augustine, where we basically went to that like little town and stuff. And I have a photograph of him. I have a photograph of them from there. And see, this is weird as a breakdown. No, it's not. Like, we were married at that time. We were married at the time because I took it with a Fujifilm, like a Fujifilm camera that she had at the time. And that's where we had it from. So we were maybe most recently, maybe like 1 or 2 years married at that point. Yeah. 1 or 2 years married. Anyway, so I have like these photographs in time of him that, you know, all of a sudden you're kind of going back into this house, you know, from this beautiful, 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 you know, sublime space into a interior, almost like cloudy, smoky, open air scene of jostled around furniture in a living room on a tile floor, with like, you know, a team of EMTs working to try to get this guy revived, right? And, you know, it was like a mess of, you know, like huge fishing tackle boxes of EMT equipment like strewn all over the floor, and they're doing the best they can, just like intensely trying to get this guy revived. And you know, it was like a scene of family members just like beside themselves with, you know, grief, you know, just like a what the fuck am I gonna do now scene. And it was very reminiscent of how I witnessed my stepdad dead on the telephone. And it was like we were in Miami that weekend, and I remember feeling calm and at ease. You know, we were hanging out with friends, and I had my contacts or my glasses off at the time, and basically in South Beach in the water. And, you know, it's like there's no waves or anything, so it's all clear blue, and you're basically just kind of like, you could just like lay out and like extend your legs and arms out and float in the salt water. And I remember having like a wave rush over me then. And I got back to my phone like maybe 2 hours later, and I'd been talking to my mom all morning of like, well, I don't see, he isn't calling, he isn't picking it up, I'm concerned. And I was like, well, you know, give it a little time. And, you know, the scene ultimately like played out over the phone when I was calling, where I was like, okay, well, I know how to get into his house. He has like one window unlocked, and that's whenever I have to get into his house for whatever reason. He doesn't have keys out, but I know that window's unlocked. So you can kind of open it with your hands, like put your hands and like open it that way. And she ultimately did that, and she had the phone, and it was like playing out over the phone. And you know, and that's like, she was like, he was dead in his bed watching television. And the wave of grief that hit her was, you know, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do now? Like, this person is gone. And that was the same grief that hit there. And it was weird because I never actually saw him. Never actually saw Tom pass away, or I never made it to the funeral. I think my grief was washed over in a sense of obligation that I needed to help keep my dad's business running so that money would be at least going to her, and we could figure out like how that was going to move forward. And I never went. And I also never went because like family from previous lives were coming and being confrontational about what might be left behind, and just never went. And I guess as a consequence, the only record that I have is a vague memory of a telephone call of my mom, you know, finding him and expressing his passing, you know, or seeing it really there in real life happen. And I think that that's where I ended up having that wave of grief kind of hit me, you know, during that thing with the EMTs and stuff. And, you know, it was like I had a wave of like sick to my stomach that hit me, like a flush wave, almost to the point where like I didn't know if I was going to like lose it there, and I would have to go. And I'm always a walker. Like I'm a pacer. I don't like sitting in a place for a particular period of time, especially if I have to think. Like I like to think on my feet and walk around, you know. I think that's the reason why I like to jog a lot, is because I'm always thinking when I'm jogging, and, you know, it gives me a space to kind of like let go, and I'm not like a sitter and walker or sitter and thinker. So I was just like, in order to kind of stave off that grief, I would kind of like walk to the bathroom that was like just adjacent, that was like the guest bathroom, that I would kind of like walk away and kind of like, am I going to throw up? Am I going to throw up? No. Okay. Leave. I tried, can't. Anyway, so like it passed, the feeling passed. And then it was just like basically kind of the obligation of like listening to a bunch of guys who spoke English and transferring that information to people that spoke Spanish first, and, you know, giving condolences and letting them know that I was present for them in this time. And, you know, and, you know, it probably was a good hour or so before they moved him, and they said, you know, well, I think we got a heart rate at the end. You know, we'll see if we can get him back up and running. But, you know, he had been out for so long that it was just, you know, they had him on equipment. I didn't go to the hospital. They went to the hospital. The family went to the hospital. And, you know, and it was basically over with, you know, like he was dead on the floor, but able to be revived with a heartbeat. But the brain had oxygen for like that chunk of time or more. And whenever they got him in the ambulance and left and everybody went, I just went back 70 yards to Jenny Lynn's parents' house, and Jenny Lynn is just sitting there with Marco as Marco's taking a shower. And, you know, kind of we're sitting in the closet, organizing the closet, and he's just calm and she's calm and everything is all right. And that stuck with me for the longest time. You know, it was something that they didn't have to witness firsthand, that I had to witness firsthand, that it was stuck with me for the longest time. I wanted to write about it, and I probably will want to write about it, because I think that this is a poor substitute, you know, for that. That I don't know, the drives back and forth kind of hit me with the sunlight with the mass just recently. And I realized, you know, the light is similar to that light, you know, like this must be like right up on a year of that. And I asked, and she's like, it was yesterday. And I was like, damn, okay. There's strange things that can happen to you in a year. Like, I think myself a year ago was down on myself for not being able to find work. And then 5 seconds later, I found work. And I like my job a lot. Do I want more, or like, you know, shift it into a better direction? Yeah, sure. But I like it, and it's fine for now. It's fine for this 5 minutes. But it's like, even if I lost it tomorrow because they need to lay people off because of all this, who gives a shit? They're all your years, you know? They're all your years until they're not your years anymore. And yeah. And that's all I got. And that's all I got for that thought. Yeah, I do. I hope everybody's doing okay. I know a lot of people aren't. But just try to meditate and think that everything, even if it's not all right for whatever reason, it's going to be all right. Because it's going to be, you know, it's all going to be. And this is just a blip, you know. And even if there's a shift and change in the way that we have to address and think about each other and, you know, exist together, you know, it's still going to be all right. And you're going to adapt to it, and it's going to be fine until you can't. And then it's over, you know. So you're still here. It's all good. Have a good time. And yeah.